Welcome to the Grappling with podcast. Dr. Chris Hardy and William Walker will take a deep dive into topics covering wellness and prevention, performance, recovery, and injury management. Our mission is to provide the latest science-based information to help you get the most out of your grappling journey, both on and off the mats, and help you overcome any challenges you may be grappling with. Dr. Hardy is a licensed physician and BJJ practitioner, but the contents of the podcast are meant for educational purposes only and should not be taken as medical advice. Please seek out personalized care from your own medical provider prior to implementing any medical treatment or intervention.
Hey there.
Hi.
What's going on, man?
You know,
Yeah?
another day, another dollar. I do see, though, that you have taken my follow, or you have started following me in my leadership of wrinkly shirts.
Yes. You kind of you said that's a necessity, and
Yeah.
I'm not going to tolerate any non-wrinkly shirts.
The good technique is it comes out of the dryer, and then it goes in this pile over here of clean clothes. And you don't put it on, you don't put it in the dresser. You don't hang it up.
Yep.
And that sucker's going to be ready for you, prime and pressed in about 3 days. And you pick that up, and it's got some nice creases.
The right amount of wrinkle on it? Yeah.
It's good.
Okay, cool.
It looks good on you.
Nice, dude.
How are you?
I'm good, man. We had a busy weekend. You know, you were at the competition a little longer than I was, but we had a good showing, I think, from our team.
Yeah, we got out of there about 8 o'clock, I think it was.
Yeah.
We had one lone soldier at the end, Mike, tall Mike. He did great. Got 4 subs, and
It's pretty awesome.
Put people on notice. And then
Skydra and Greg did last.
Skydra and Greg, they did. They stuck it out with us.
Did they?
Yeah, that was cool. So big ups to them for being soldiers.
Nice. I had banker's hours. I think I was there from like noon to 4.
You had like a little nap you needed to get to, and
Yeah.
you're getting a little dodgy.
We had really good showing though from everyone that competed. They really, I think I saw a lot of progress in all their games and their composure and whole 9 yards. It was really cool.
Everyone fought hard, and that's kind of like the bigger piece than anything. Is
Totally,
just challenging yourself to.
Yeah, putting themselves out there. I mean, you know, out of their comfort zone is awesome.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed it. So so that's another one down. I think we have some more coming up this summer too. So should be cool.
We had one guy that he had food poisoning like 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And like full blown, and he still stuck it out. Had 4 matches, got 2 submissions, and he in between his 3rd and 4th. It was pretty much guaranteed he was going to throw up.
Okay.
Almost on the mat. Like there was a point where he wanted to on the mat, but then he the match ended, and he's like, I think I might, and I was like, just go outside. Yep. It's all good. He's like, how much time in between my match? I was like, don't even worry about it.
Yeah, it's okay.
Just go outside. And he's like, I think I'm going to throw up. I was like, do your thing, man. So he went outside. I don't know what happened out there. But unfortunately, it was like as he was walking, I looked at the smooth comp, and I was like, Joe, spoiler alert. I go, 5 minutes, and I just see him go. He just dipped his head, and I think maybe that helped suppress it, because then he did his last match, which was a crazy battle with a gym that I've dropped in at plenty of times, Classic, and it was awesome because he was down early, like 11-0, and he pulled an ankle lock out of the bag.
That's awesome.
Yep. He was down tough. The guy mounted him. The guy had really good control. Like you could tell the kid was good. And Joe was listening. We said, hey, because the guy was really high. He was able to invert and like put his feet in the armpits and just roll through and right into single leg X.
Nice.
And captured that ankle. And he wanted it more than anything in his life. Partly because on Friday, which was the day before the tournament, we put a bounty on certain submissions. So I got a special place in my heart for old Joe.
So what do you owe him now?
I owe him a rash guard of his choice.
Okay.
So there was one submission that he gets a blizzard, There's one submission that if he were to got it, he would get a rash guard, which was our ankle lock that we've been working on. And then there was another one that also had a rash guard. There was a certain triangle setup, but the golden goose was baseball bat choke from the standing position.
Yes.
Just drop right into that sucker, as you're well aware.
I'm very well aware. I was on the receiving end as a blue belt in competition. Yeah, it sucks.
That one, the bounty was a gi.
No kidding.
Yeah, I was like, if you hit this, because he was very confident. He was doing it in practice to people, poor souls, and he was like, I'm gonna go for it, and it just didn't come about. But it was good. So when he got a hold of an ankle, he got 2 ankle locks.
So no spats though. You weren't putting those up there.
Spats?
Yeah, I know.
How did I know? Actually, Mike, someone called me out today.
Yeah,
because this Ruski hit me up. And he was like, hey, well, you still coached Mike even though he's wearing spats? Because I posted a video of Mike.
He had shorts on, though.
Thank you. Big difference. If you wear shorts over your spats, you're a good person.
But hypothetically, if he would have shown up with no shorts,
I would have called the cops and said there's a pedophile around kids.
Okay. And just get him out of there immediately. Okay.
Yeah, I would have ripped his rash guard off.
Yeah.
It would have been done. Then he would have been in spats with no shirt. What kind of circus animal is that?
I don't know, man.
He's also 6'3", like 150 pounds. So that would have looked real weird. Like, what's that? Tim Burton? Remember the Halloween?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, that's him.
Yeah. That was the Nightmare Before Christmas.
That's it. Yeah. Shout out to Tall Mike.
Catch you just totally.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So that's how my weekend went.
Yeah.
And yours a little bit.
Yeah, mine too.
Yeah. What are we talking about today?
Oh man, we're gonna do. Remember last week I was like reticent to do the whole cold exposure thing because other people have done it.
You were very reticent about that.
I was, but I did it anyway. This is the other side of the coin, the heat instead of cold. And again, I think the person that does this the best and has a lot of research and actually published a paper herself is Rhonda Patrick on saunas specifically. You guys should check that out. She does a really nice job with that. Again, what I'm going to try to do is just kind of do a brief overview and then do some things that I think are specific to our sport that I think can be helpful, which just to give it a little kind of another angle. So I'm not just rehashing stuff that other people have done.
Yeah.
If that's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'll allow it.
Yeah, and the only other thing I'll say about sauna is it's one of those things that not everyone has one lying around, right? And so that was another reason. But after we talk about some of the health benefits, some people may want to consider, investing. It's an investment in health. Basically,
are you going to bring up heat and like injury?
A little bit
stuff.
Not so much injury per se, but like recovery a little bit. Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit. But anyway, yeah, as always, just stop me and ask questions along the way.
Well, I always wonder, the reason I ask is because I always wonder about that whole like putting heat on an injury or cold and like.
Oh my gosh, man. I've seen verbal fist fights in the rehab world.
Wow.
Over that. It's absurd. And I have my own take on that too.
So there's a bit of a debate on that.
There always is, man. It's the ice versus heat debate. Honestly, they both have their place. So we can remind me of that. We can kind of just hash it a little bit at the end.
Sure.
So, when we're talking about sauna or, some type of deliberate heat exposure, I mean, you're subjecting yourself to a stress basically.
And this is specifically for recovery we're talking about now.
No. I will be talking about that for our sport, but I want to give people a background, some of the health benefits.
Okay.
Kind of interesting,
actually. Okay, of sauna and stuff like
that. Yeah. So it's actually pretty fascinating. And I know you love my glasses, so I'm going to put them on.
Yeah. Do you have to be naked or naked with a bath towel?
It depends on how old you are.
Okay.
There's a rule. Males over 60 must be naked.
Wow. All right.
Okay. And they need to also put their leg up on something while they talk to you as if it's not awkward.
Okay. Yeah. Is this what Fauci puts out there?
No, I'm just observation.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I've lived on the planet.
Yeah. For well over 60.
Not quite yet, but yeah, you might as well lump me in.
Yeah, I mean, fooled me.
I mean, after 50, it doesn't matter. It's, one step in the grave, pretty much.
Yeah, we'll get you into a home soon.
Yeah, Carrie already has a plan. So, but that is a rule. If you're over 60, you must be, since you asked the question.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about this, all the research I'm going to talk about, almost all of it has come out of Finland. They have a culture of sauna there. It's actually pretty interesting. A very cold, kind of a dark place as far as, their latitude where they are towards the North Pole there. But over time, that's been their culture for years. And now, not surprisingly, in the modern age, a lot of the actual research is coming from there. So when I talk about heat exposure in sauna and these research outcomes, we're talking about like an average exposure to like 174 degrees. Could be a little lower, could be a little higher, up to 185, but that's the general range. And average about 15 minutes per exposure. Sometimes lower, sometimes up to 20 minutes at that temperature. So again, the big study, and Rhonda Patrick talked about this study a lot. They had a study showing people that do sauna 4 to 7 times a week. This is pretty amazing, actually. That group had a decrease in all-cause mortality. You know what that is? Basically dying from anything.
Right.
Okay. They had a reduction of that of 40% compared to people that didn't do sauna. And they controlled for all those other lifestyle variables and stuff, smoking, all the confounders typically, which was pretty amazing.
Yeah.
And
it seems like a pretty significant number.
Very significant. You think about, if you and I, all things else being equal, like if we had exactly the same lifestyle, genetics, let's say we are twins, we ate the same, exercised the same, and I did sauna 4 to 7 times a week and you didn't. According to the study, I'd have a 40% less chance of dying of anything. Than you would. So I think that's pretty amazing. Yeah. Now they also looked at developing dementia like Alzheimer's and things like that. There's a 66% decrease.
How does that work?
Well, I'm going to tell you, we'll talk about what they're theorizing on how that works. That's a great question. A lot of this is still theoretical because you make observations, right? When you do an observational study and you look at someone's patterns of behavior and then you collect data, you see this data like 66%. Okay, well, what is the next question is why? Right. And then they start looking into some of the molecular mechanisms of what heat exposure may do. And so,
I'm interested in that. I have someone in my life that has, I would say is getting dementia.
Yeah.
Kind of stuff like that. And so I'd be interested to hear.
I'll tell you what they are thinking of how it works. And we're going to talk about that here later. I just want to kind of give a broad overview, some of the medical benefits.
That person is you.
Oh, me?
Yeah.
Oh, thanks.
It's slowly coming on.
Well, if you were a friend, you would have said something to me.
I just did.
On the podcast, you're like, hey, man, are you okay?
I think you're dying. In the brain only.
Do you?
That's not what dementia is it?
Pretty much, man.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like I will, what is me is.
Is it hard to self?
You're asking me as someone with dementia? Is what you're saying?
Is it hard for someone that is going down that road? Is it hard to recognize?
Yeah. So it can be. And then when you do recognize it in yourself, usually it's your loved ones that recognize it first, right? Because you don't really like, oh, well, you're forgetting more stuff. Short-term memory type of stuff goes away. But when I think for a lot of people, and Carrie can tell you, she has patients that, when they do have an insight that something's wrong, it's kind of devastating.
Right.
You're like, oh, man. Oh, it's just that realization. You have that lucid moment of, this isn't right, and that's creates depression, anxiety, the whole 9 yards.
It could probably be similar to like a cancer diagnosis or something like that, where there's almost like an end in sight,
and not a good one.
Right.
Yeah, right. And exactly, and it's rough. So anything we can do to look at, and the dementia is the constellation of symptoms. Okay. The underlying cause is some type of neurodegenerative disease, Alzheimer's, dementia being one of them. There's a bunch of them, like Lewy body disease. There's a Parkinson's has a dementia component too. So those things are, those neurodegenerative diseases, one of the things, and we're going to talk about why they think that sauna can be protective here in a second. Kind of the last big overall health thing in this study is they saw a 50% decrease in mortality from cardiovascular disease. Half. I mean, that's incredible.
Is that going to, I don't know if this is one of the confounders that you're talking about, but kind of like the very popular meat study that came out that, everyone latched onto, but it didn't take into account that people that eat McDonald's are also having soda and blah, blah, blah.
Totally.
Lifestyle. Is this, because I would assume people that are typically going to go to the sauna 4 times a week, they're probably not eating totally horribly. They're probably active in some fashion in their life. Does this take in that account?
It did.
Okay.
Yeah. So they try to, and when you do a study like that, you try to control for those are called confounders as much as possible. It's never perfect, but for the major ones, they did control for these things, which is pretty interesting. Yeah. So, what they try to get is eliminate all the other variables, control for them, and then what you're hopefully left with is the variable you're looking at, right? As far as then you're taking whatever the difference is between those groups and looking at the differences in outcome. Yeah. In this case, cardiovascular.
So if they had, they knew that they had 50 vegetarians that are all into yoga and they, have a fairly active lifestyle of some sort. It's like you can take away probably, they don't smoke, they don't do this.
That's right.
Okay.
And that was an early study, I believe in the 2000s. Matter of fact, talking on a different subject, talking about implementing a vegetarian diet for heart disease, right? They showed all these benefits when it was a terribly controlled observational study that was called the healthy user bias, right? Where they're more likely to also do other healthy things, like you said.
Right.
So, that's very important to control for, and it's very difficult, but they did a pretty darn good job of it.
Okay, cool.
So, but it's still an observational study. So we'll take that for what it's worth.
What do you mean by it's still observation?
In other words, we didn't do a randomized controlled trial of, okay, we're going to get 50 people in 2 groups, right? And one of them is going to do sauna. We're trying to equalize all the other variables. We're actually doing a scientific study and with a beginning and an end point, and you randomize the groups. So randomization is important.
So that's a randomized controlled study.
That what I'm talking about. This is, we question people on the frequency of sauna use and a bunch of other lifestyle factors, right? Yeah.
So it's just a little bit less involved. You're kind of relying on the person's answers and
totally. And just like so these, but you're talking about a group of people where that is kind of a cultural thing they do. Right. So it's a little easier that way. Yeah, no, it's a great question. So the next thing is, what is this actually doing to the body and brain, sauna? One of the things physiologically, especially under the conditions we talked about, like at, between 185 degrees for 15 or 20 minutes, we see an increase in our cardiac output by 70%. So cardiac output is a combination of stroke volume. In other words, every time the heart pumps something out, the amount it pumps, and the heart rate. So cardiac output is a combination of 2 things. So the more per beat that you're pushing up blood out, and the faster it's beating, that translates into cardiac output. So what they're showing is they didn't see much change in stroke volume, but your heart increases substantially, almost to like an aerobic exercise amount. A lot of the studies see heart rates go up to like 150, right? Which, that's like low level cardio, like getting on a bike. So that's one of the things it does. It also takes, as the opposite of cold, if you remember, when we get into cold, the blood comes from the extremities to the central aspect of the body. The opposite happens with heat. We try to pull blood into the extremities to dissipate that heat. So that happens to the blood as well. And you also sweat significantly. And, under the conditions we're talking about per session of 15, 20 minutes, sometimes up to a pound of water. So it's significant from that. And the other thing that I'm going to come back to for our group is you acclimatize to future heat exposure. So, like anything else, like remember we talked with the cold, if you continuously do this cold exposure and, you have that fat change from white to beige or brown fat, you become more and more acclimated to future cold exposure. So that stressor from the environment doesn't have as strong of a physiologic effect, and you become resilient to it. The same thing happens with the heat. And it's through the same, remember hormesis, it's the same thing we talked about. Because if the brain thinks, hey, we're getting this regular high heat exposure, we got to do something about that because apparently this is our environment now, so we got to kind of adapt to it. Whether it's lifting weights or anything else, if we're giving an environmental demand, the body has to rise to meet it, which is the definition of allostasis, if you remember, stability through change. So the body has to change, in other words, to maintain stability with whatever environment we're talking about. And if we're creating an artificial environment of heat enough times a week, it's going to try to adapt to that. And what's interesting is, I don't know about you, I guess we can start talking about it right now. One of the biggest things I've had with jiu-jitsu, especially in the summertime, is when I overheat in the gym, I get gassed immediately.
Right.
And that's part of a protective response that the brain does. It's like, hey, dummy, we're too hot. You need to slow down your physical activity.
Yeah.
And so it puts the brakes on your performance. What they found is when you acclimate to heat like this, that doesn't bother you as much. And so when you're grappling in like a hot environment, you're going to be able to go further without the exhaustion if you kind of acclimatize to it.
What about the people that will do that? Is there a benefit? I assume there's a benefit if people are doing it, but that could be wrong. People that will do like 20 minutes at like 200 degrees. I think the really hot stuff, because the range you were talking there was up to like 180.
People push it.
Yeah. Are you getting something more?
Well, it's more intense, right? So the idea of that would be you could be in there less amount of time to get some of the same benefits. The problem is it's a law of diminishing returns. You start getting too high in there, your body's going to start shutting down. Matter of fact, when we get in sauna initially, we have a little bit of an increase in our core body temperature. But as we stay in through the session, it starts rising up, up to 102 sometimes. If you stay in it too long, you're going to get into dangerous core body temperature levels. Plus, just if you think about that, 200 degrees, 212 is where water boils.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, especially if there's any humidity in there, by breathing in, you risk also burning your airways a little bit too. Okay. Right. So there's always people that are like, bro, I can handle it. I'm like, okay, whatever, man.
It is, do you drink water while you're there?
Yeah.
I think I've been in a sauna once in my life.
Yeah, you absolutely can. It depends on your hydration level before. There's nothing that's not a bad thing to do. I personally like to, if I'm not super hydrated before, I definitely hydrate afterwards, and I replace the salt too. Just like when we talked about the dehydration previously, you want to have some type of electrolyte solution too with that. You don't want to just replace it with pure water because then you can dilute.
If you're going to sauna on days you work out, would you do it before or after?
Oh, great question. There's actually some benefit that prolongs the adaptive response to exercise by doing it afterwards.
Okay. So even weight training or something like that,
Yep. Well, they've done a lot on endurance athletes especially, and they found that they're increasing some of their parameters like time to exhaustion, VO2 max, things like that by doing a sauna session after a workout.
Okay.
So there might be some performance gains to that. Not so much with strength training, it doesn't seem. So, but for endurance, for sure.
What about the person that's on their weight loss journey? And obviously, like you said, you could lose a pound just by sitting in there. We're not talking about that. That's kind of a fluctuating pound. But person that's on their weight loss journey, maybe they're overweight right now. They're trying to avoid that diabetes phone call. So they're just at that part of their journey. Are they going to get a benefit for them? We're
going to talk about some of the other benefits that possibly could help them.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's another good question that we're going to get to as far as that. So
the answer is yes, but keep listening.
Yes, the answer is yes.
Okay.
And I'll tell you how I think that would happen.
Okay.
So another physio, we were talking about what else happens to the body when we subject it to heat like this, right? So the other thing is we talked about cold shock proteins.
Yeah.
So guess what we're going to talk about?
Yeah.
Heat shock proteins, right?
Look at the big brain on Liv.
So very much like the cold shock proteins, we're looking at extreme environments, and especially with heat, high temperature. As a matter of fact, if you think about why we develop a fever for pathogens like viruses and things like that, have you ever thought about how that helps kill it off?
I always just thought of it as like there's a little engine inside me.
Sorry, what?
What?
That's just a weird... An engine?
Yeah.
You're married to him, It's
I mean
weird.
like a mechanical engine, not like old,
An engine?
Never mind.
Please continue. I'm really...
I might get in trouble for that.
I like to... No, I want to know more.
Feather, not dot. But,
Just stop.
He's having a good time. So I always imagine an engine in me, and my body's battling, so that engine's actually revving up a bit to help burn the fuel, but it's bad gas, not like you bum when you're rolling.
You're thinking like if I put some gasoline in my car that had some water in it.
It just wasn't great quality, and now I'm sputtering, but I got to burn through it, so it's going to have to be revved up a bit.
So
that's how my brain works.
Okay, it's fine.
Thank you.
It's not fine.
It's not fine.
He can be him.
He's a big dumb animal, folks.
It's okay. But as far as combating some kind of foreign pathogen like a virus, the idea is, viruses are little pieces of protein.
Yeah, I think of Braveheart. Like that's inside my body.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that extra heat will help the virus. The protein has to be folded in such a way, and sometimes it can kind of dismantle that protein structure of the virus a bit. And that is called denaturation. It just means proteins fold. There are strings of amino acids. They fold in this 3D conformation, like some kind of weird Rubik's Cube, right? You can imagine a snake that then folds into some kind of three-dimensional object. Okay. That object has a very specific structure and orientation. It has to stay that way to operate. If it starts to unfold, it's no longer active and it doesn't work anymore. Okay. So
I need some psilocybin for this conversation.
You may.
Okay, keep going.
Okay. So the heat shock proteins actually can come and stabilize those proteins in our body for our machinery.
So they don't expand and unravel.
So they can actually help repair some of the damaged proteins too. So we're looking at that. And guess what? That's also part of aging.
Okay. So if you're getting just normally sick, sauna can help.
Well, that's what a fever does, right? So some people, and I
always associated a fever being part of the symptom of the virus.
It's your body's response to it. Okay, what your body's trying to do. That's why Carrie tells...
Because we always get freaked out when it comes to fever.
Well, I know. And that's why Carrie, to a certain amount, right? You don't want to get like 104, 105 degree fevers.
I go for 106.
That explains a lot about your cognition, actually.
I think it's big words.
Your thought processes.
Oh, thank you.
So, and you're saying that I'm basically... Okay.
I don't say the R word much.
Oh, it's going to be a rough road for you, my friend. So, anyway.
Okay, so fevers.
Yeah, so fever is your body's... It's trying to do something. It's trying to stop this invader by making the body's environment inhospitable.
So should we not try taking down.
Exactly. And so what Carrie will tell her parents of the kids, they keep giving their kids Tylenol or whatever.
Yeah.
As long as it's not too high, it's like that's the body doing its job. And
can I get a too high number?
Yeah, you can. You can get it.
Right,
you know, if it's
now? Like, can you tell me?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. If it gets up to like 104, 105, we start worrying about that. That needs to come down a little bit. But if a fever is like 102, what would you say, Carrie? What's your cutoff for that?
Well, so that's when we're talking about kids, it's a little bit different.
Yeah, she's saying it's different for kids.
Yeah, but still, in age, right? So anything over 101 for someone less than 6 months old.
Okay.
Not good.
So she's saying if you're less than 6 months old, anything over 101 is not good.
And then we can go up to 103, 104.
Yeah, she said then after that you can go up to 103, 104. But you get worried if it's persistent when
If we can't bring it down.
Yeah.
Extended period of time also, I assume, right?
Yeah.
But my point is, though, you know, people are so worried about treating the fever
at 100.
Yeah, that you know you're impacting your body. Your body's trying. It's smart. It's trying to kill the thing, and you're impeding its defenses.
Okay.
So a fever is good for you in certain. You know, I mean, it's good to help. I say good for you, but it's part of your body's natural process to fight an infection. Okay.
So heat shock proteins do
what they do is when you have an elevated core body temperature, it's a stress response. Your body then secretes these things called heat shock proteins to help stabilize your machinery that you need to operate as a human. You know, all the proteins that are there as part of your, metabolic machinery, your immune system, a bunch of different things. Too high, they'll start to kind of unravel, so to speak, and not work as well. So these things come in to stabilize them in that kind of environment. But what's interesting, and they also help repair things too. So if you look at what aging is, we're going to kind of shift this to another topic, but with the same concept. Aging is damaged proteins, things aggregating together that shouldn't, but clumps of trash, you can think of it. And that's a lot of neurodegenerative diseases. We see that within cells. We see these cells having kind of damaged proteins all clumped together, like Alzheimer's. You know, the Alzheimer's, there's what we call tangles and plaques and things like that are kind of a characteristic of some of these degenerative diseases. And that is why they think some of this heat shock protein, that should be like a drink.
You're an idiot.
We should make heat shock teen.
Why not? That sounds good. It's got a good ring to it.
Yeah. But that's why they think that it may help with these neurodegenerative diseases, because it helps stabilize and repair some of these proteins that are misfolding and
heat shock teeny.
A heat shock teeny?
Yeah.
Dude, I like where you're going with this.
A martini with heat shock proteins. With jalapeno.
And if we make an IPA flavor, we'll make a lot of people happy in our academy.
At least one ginger.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah.
I think it'd be a good marketing tool. But that was your earlier question on why. That's why we think the sauna exposure by regular generation of heat shock proteins may be beneficial to help people with that are either predisposed or showing early signs of neurodegenerative diseases.
So it sounds like if you have these diseases in your family, grandpa had it, like
totally
ALS or something, that it would be beneficial, especially in your adulthood right now, to just get ahead of that curve. And this is something that you could do.
Hedging your bets, basically. Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. And that's what, I mean, not only that, but, the cardiovascular benefit is huge. Right. Okay. So, I mean, there's all kinds of.
Olivia's been trying to get us to buy one.
Well, I'm going to talk a little more about it, and maybe this will put you over the edge. Okay.
Does it have to do with my abs?
Your ab?
Son of a bitch.
You said plural. I was confused.
Yeah, I could tell. So, can you get tan from sauna?
Are you? What?
No.
Okay.
No.
Hey, I'm crossing all my T's.
You need UV light for that. Yeah,
I know.
It's okay.
I was just asking.
It was a fine question.
I was testing you.
Okay. Make sure that I wasn't putting off some BS. Or testing my cognitive
something
ability right now.
That was an R-worded question.
Okay. We really need to get Carrie a little mic that she can turn on and off.
Something.
Some zingers coming through. So, again, many of these physiologic benefits are similar to moderate high intensity exercise. So let's say, Bill, that you were injured, and I hope this doesn't happen to you, but let's say it kind of took you off the mats for a while. So you're worried about, and that you couldn't exercise effectively. A lot of people, especially people, we're looking at older people right now that have mobility issues, that have a hard time getting aerobic exercise. It's good for their heart. They're using this as what's called an exercise mometic. In other words, the effects of sauna mimic the benefits we're seeing in moderate to high intensity endurance exercise, which is really fascinating. So you could say someone like you, if you were injured and couldn't train, you could continue to get some cardiovascular benefit by just doing sauna while you're injured too, which is kind of interesting. And it also helps reduce muscle atrophy, which is the, kind of shrinking of the muscle mass too. It helps protect against that, which I think is really, really interesting.
So why don't they have because I'm a big fan of 600 Pound Life, TV show. Why don't, when they're getting those people on their clapping workouts and stuff, why don't they also, I guess it's hard for them to move. Or maybe.
What, put them in a sauna?
Yeah, I mean.
You got to be careful too, okay? If someone is, that heavy, and the strain on their heart.
Which the clapping workout, I'm not making fun of it. It sounds funny, but it's you got to start somewhere.
Exactly, so, but you'd have to be very careful about your exposure. You'd have to dose it just like exercise because the strain on their hearts is a lot.
Okay. Yeah.
And it would just be like, here, get on the treadmill and,
And even though
hit
it's low level, it's still their starting point.
Yeah. If I was advising on someone like that and giving them kind of a program, we would do probably some deliberate cold exposure to have some of that white fat transfer into more of the brownish, beige fat to help burn more of it.
Sure.
You could also get some low level, start very slowly for the sauna exposure, just for some of the cardiovascular benefits. It gets their heart rate up without, because structurally those people are really compromised, just their joints and stuff. But yeah, absolutely.
Seems like there could be a huge benefit though. For people in that.
Well, you'd have to, with someone like that, and these TV shows just drive me crazy. I mean, you really would do a ton of different stuff to support someone like that, right? And it's not just one thing, right? It's not just diet and exercise. There's all kinds of other stuff.
You obviously haven't seen Big Brother, or not Big Brother. What's the other one? With Bob? Jillian.
Biggest Loser, which they don't have on the TV.
Well, let me tell you something. I went off on that. I gave a presentation in 2015, and I specifically went after that show.
Oh, really?
Yep. Not a fan.
Oh, wow.
Well, they dropped their calories to
Well, no, it's absurd, and I don't even want. It makes me mad just listening to it. And you look at every single one of those people 2 years later.
Oh yeah.
And they're back to where they were.
I think we need to talk about this on another episode. I would love to get you ramped up because you're starting to perspire.
It just drives me crazy because it's one of the worst things we've done for public. It's one of the that's a great. Why don't we do that?
What Chris hates?
Because I'm a curmudgeon. Yeah. You'd be like, here's our section on things Chris hates, and I could rant.
I love it.
That'd be amazing for me. Back to some of the physiologic effects too. One of the things we know about exercise is it secretes something called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, BDNF, which helps parts of the brain actually regrow neuron connections. So especially at the hippocampus, which is our memory kind of center, our parts of our prefrontal cortex, which is where what we call executive function. That's like our ability to look at a situation and kind of make a judgment about it, or kind of inhibit an action that we want to do. Like just looking at you sometimes, I sometimes want to punch you in the face. What? But then I decide, I'm like, it's not his fault. And, that's my prefrontal cortex being like, you don't need to do that to Bill.
Right.
What's that? No, I'm using an example. I never want to punch you in the face, but that was just an example that those parts of the brain are there that separates us from animals that just react.
Right.
We're able to take stock in the situation and be like, So when you see people lose connection to both their hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, you've seen some dementia patients are very combative. They don't know where they are. They can't orient to person, place, and time. So a lot of these things, this is another reason why it could be helpful for people with that are starting to show that. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor, which exercise is a huge production of it, and also sauna does too. So that's another cool effect that it has. Just because it's, again, think of it like a different type of stimulus that mimics exercise. It also decreases blood pressure. So people that have hypertension, regular sauna use has shown to significantly reduce blood pressure as well.
Interesting.
And I think all of these have, and another thing is improved depressive symptoms. People with depression, they've done studies and have them do sauna, and they typically are doing better. What they think is going on, what ties most of this stuff together is a reduction in systemic inflammation. So we know that, and this goes back to your diabetes question, right?
Yeah, the person that's like
like pre-diabetic or something.
Yeah.
What this does, it's an acute stressor to the body, which then promotes secretion of this cytokine. A cytokine is just a chemical messenger. It's called interleukin-6. You don't need to know that. But that actually stimulates, after that short increase in that, it stimulates a long-term secretion of this anti-inflammatory messenger called interleukin-10. You guys don't need to know that, but just know that this sauna use actually promotes an anti-inflammatory state. So things like depression, diabetes, all these things, and I'm going to quote my book because all these things are tied into, they're kind of an underlying theme for a ton of chronic diseases. Oh. So if you can reduce systemic inflammation, you'll improve depressive symptoms, because there's a lot of depression we're learning now. And I think Carrie just saw some research from the UK that they actually looked at that whole serotonin issue and say, hey, that's not so much. It's not really a big serotonin problem like we'd always thought it was. But what we do know is there's inflammation in the brain can certainly cause anxiety, depression, things like that. So that's the mechanism they're proposing, that it has all these big effects on wellness.
Right.
Is the anti-inflammation type of thing.
Okay.
Which I think is pretty cool. Yeah, so I mean that's the gist of it. And I think the things for our community specifically are the heat, acclimatizing to heat.
Yeah. So
you can, let's say you're at a gym or you're at a tournament, and hey, it's not much air. Like we noticed, I don't know, it felt a little hot and muggy.
It started to, yeah, for sure.
Near the end of the day in that tournament. Well, it will help you do better in those type of environments as far as gassing out.
Okay.
Right. So that's a big one for our community. And what I'm going to get into here in a second, because you asked about recovery.
Yeah. Well, it's just amazing that, it seems like it's so obviously beneficial.
Mm-hmm.
Why is it not promoted more?
Well, if you look at Finland, it's in their culture.
Yeah.
So it is like it's almost like one of their cultural values. Like, this is just part of who we are. This is good. We know this is good for us.
The Russians have similar.
And Japanese too in different.
Yeah.
Absolutely. There's a lot of, first of all, it's uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. Okay. And I'll just say this is a general statement for this country, not for everyone in this country, but a lot of them.
Mind your P's and Q's.
I'm just saying.
I got American flag tattoo on.
I love this country, man. I was in the military 13 years, but I'll just call it out.
National Guard doesn't count. Just joking, National Guard guy.
I'm not.
I don't want one of them to come after me.
They may.
I know.
They're like, we serve too, bro. But let's just call it out. And it's not just that, but a lot of these Western industrial nations, people don't like adversity anymore. Mm-hmm. They want to be comfortable. They want to, like I said last time, we talked about why are people so averse to a short-term cold exposure? It's almost like you got to hold a gun to them. Mm-hmm. They're like, I'm not getting in that thing. Like, okay. Same thing. This sauna at 185 degrees is not comfortable for 15 minutes. And I think people want more instant gratification type of things.
Yeah.
Look at how how successful are all these diets that don't work long term? Right. It's the same thing. Right. That's just my opinion.
Or even working out, right? Like, are you going to see results after you work out that day? No.
Yeah, I had someone come to me and I'm asked about, hey, I need to kind of lose some of this here. What exercises can I do to get rid of my belly? I'm like, none. I'm like, you get a 15-year-old boy who doesn't work out at all, but is super lean. He's got abs. It has nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
It has to do with your body fat. So it's a dietary thing. So, but people want, that kind of instant gratification, and purchasing a sauna is a significant investment too. It's not like getting a little exercise bike that you're going to hang your clothes on in 6 months. Right. It's not like a huge investment.
But at the same time, I mean, a lot of the gyms nowadays have them, like public gyms.
They do. And, a lot of people, and rightly so, it depends on the cleanliness standards of those gyms. I mean, those things could be horrific if,
some asshole peeing on the
especially,
rocks.
With the, who knows, right? Or the dudes over 60 that, by law cannot wear clothes.
As we talked about.
Yeah. It depends on how, how cleanliness, it's the whole thing. It's like a public hot tub, I mean, take your chances.
Yeah.
So that's a barrier for some people too. A lot of people would want to do this in the privacy of their own homes for various reasons, but it's a significant investment. And that's why, they've studied other things like, not as much though, like the taking hot baths.
Yeah.
And that does have some benefit too.
That goes in where I was actually going to ask is, can we get similar benefits from, like I've said before, when I shower, I like to have that thing borderline burning.
Yeah.
Okay, bath shower kind of thing. Or if you just live in like Arizona and it's hot outside.
Most people in Arizona, they spend more time indoors in the summertime than out.
But if they're like, okay, maybe it's not as effective as 15 minutes in a sauna, but if I'm like, I'm going to spend an hour, I'm going to hike, or walk around or something.
Sure. Because it doesn't matter what's causing the stimulus, as long as
it's not like the cold therapy thing where you got to have a water element.
It helps.
What helps?
It with the cold. I mean, you're right. To an extent, you're right. Making it humid in there doesn't allow the heat to evaporate as easy. So a little bit of humidity in there can
usually in the sauna.
Yeah. But you're right. I mean, it doesn't matter what the stimulus is for this heat. If you start raising the core body temperature, you will get these effects, right? But it's, place like where we live, where people think 90 is super hot.
I was thinking more so people like in really hot climates, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, or even
absolutely they can.
It's just the time's going to be a little longer, most likely.
Yeah, and then you got to worry about the UV exposure too, right? And that's the other thing. You end up sitting in there and getting burned or something by the sun. But no, it will work. And hot baths are better than showers because of you're surrounded by the water. You don't have that, not just running over you. But people can do that as well. Especially if you're in there, you start getting the sweat going. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, when I was doing the Epsom salt baths constant, I noticed when an Olivia had told me, she's like, don't make the water too hot. I'm like, I got this. I want to be comfy. And 5 minutes in, I'm just sweating like crazy. I was like, what the heck is going on? Okay. I made it too hot. Let's just...
Well, as long as you're not burning your skin, I mean, you can stay in there.
It was uncomfortable.
Well, that's that dynorphin secretion, right? Those are chemicals in your body that are like, dude, this sucks.
Yeah.
And
that's me being a weenie.
Well, and if you kind of suck it up for a little longer and get that exposure, because I'm 15 minutes in our sauna at 185 starts to suck. You're like, gosh, I really want to get out. But that's where all the benefits are happening. It's just like in the cold we were talking about, when you're cold enough where you're like, dude, I want to get out of here.
You ever pee on the rocks?
Do I pee?
Like, on the heat, the rock.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Do you guys use rocks in yours?
We have both. Ours is an infrared and the traditional.
That's what teenagers would do at 24-hour fitness.
They would.
When I was younger.
We have not that I know of. I haven't caught Carrie doing it. I have not.
She did.
Did she?
Yeah.
Is that what she said?
Only once.
Okay. It smelled really sweet at the time, so maybe that was
sweet.
You don't have diabetes. So, yeah. And, a lot of people ask, hey, man, because these infrared saunas are a lot cheaper. Do they have the same benefits?
Yeah, what does that mean? Infrared?
Yeah. So when you have the traditional sauna, you have a heat element heating up rocks and the surrounding air first. Okay. Infrared has these panels that emit far infrared. And infrared is, if you look at everyone's familiar with the rainbow, red, orange, yellow, blue, that whole thing. Well, at the one end of it is red, the other end is violet, right? That is the visible spectrum of light that we can see actually with our eyes. On either side of that, there's a whole bunch in the spectrum that we just can't see. On the red side is infrared. So the wavelengths are even a little longer than red. We can't see it, but we perceive it through the skin as heat. So you can go in an infrared sauna, even at we don't care as much what the temperature is, because that's not what we're after. We're not after the air heating us. We're after the infrared heating our body. And so you can stay in there longer and sweat at a lower air temperature. So a lot of people like that more. It hasn't been studied as much. Does it have all the same benefits? Maybe, maybe not.
I thought I heard on a podcast somewhere that infrared was better.
No. It depends on what you're talking about better for.
What is something, it seems, since it's not studied?
I'll tell you anecdotally from me, because I have one that does both. If I'm super sore, I do infrared, and it seems to help muscle soreness quite a bit. The rationale for that is infrared light is what it is. We just can't see it. It's outside of our visible spectrum. Actually penetrates about 1.5 inches into our tissues from the outside. Okay. Where the traditional radiant heat sauna, and those people that study physics, yes, the rocks that have been heated are also putting off some infrared. I mean, just to be clear, but we're not talking about the whole purpose of the infrared with the panels is to bathe your body in this infrared. And I feel it penetrates further into the body, into the muscle. And it seems to me anyway, it has a better effect for, it feels better in the muscle itself. It feels like I'm getting heat actually inside the muscle.
Okay. Would that be like the same night as a jiu-jitsu training?
Sure, you can. I typically don't, because I got to watch my stress cup.
Yeah. And it's getting later in the night at that point.
And you can't. I do take a hot bath every night. So I do that. So, but it just hasn't been studied as far as as for the cardiovascular benefits and all that stuff to know, is it producing the same amount of heat shock protein in the whole 9 yards? Is it having all those cardiovascular benefits? I do think that for musculoskeletal, it may be superior. And it's also more comfortable because it's not as hot.
What's the temperature you're typically at?
Well, what it does is the temperature is almost an after effect of being in there with the infrared, but it typically gets up to like 130 or 140. Yeah. But I'm sweating.
Timeline is still similar though, 15, 20 minutes.
Well, you can stay in longer with these things. What I found is I do it about the same. I still get a really good sweat going though, even with the infrared, but I don't use it primarily for that. I use that for like muscle soreness, and I think that can help. At least it helps me for recovery.
If you find this conversation entertaining or informational, please subscribe to the YouTube page and the podcast. I always do it at the end.
Yeah. So you just want to do it right in the middle?
Yes. Well, I wanted to do it earlier and I forgot.
Oh, okay.
Squirrel.
That's all right.
Keep going.
Yeah. So people ask that all the time.
Yeah.
And, if you're going to invest in one, I would get a real reputable company that really thinks a lot about the design because there's a lot in the, like you heard people were saying, oh, it's better than traditional sauna. A lot of that's marketing BS, trying to push people, to buy something. And a lot of these companies have come up with these kind of cheap little. Yeah.
What about those things I see on, it's like usually like 1 o'clock in the morning on TV, and it'll be like this little thing that goes around your arm and it's got red lights on it. Okay,
that's different.
How?
Okay, because we're looking at a different wavelength. Red light therapy is a completely different subject
than infrared. Sounds the same.
I know.
Okay.
So you can see the red light. It has a long wavelength compared to like the blue and the violet, but it is a completely different wavelength and energy to it. And it has different biologic effects. Red light therapy has actually been studied quite a bit in like osteoarthritis, and it actually can do some really interesting things.
So that stuff's not woo-woo-y?
No.
Oh, okay.
No, it's legit. It depends on what, there's a couple and I'll tell you how I know. Not only the scientific studies, but I can tell you from a personal experience. Last couple of years, we had 3 old cats. Have since passed, but they're in their 20s. Okay, and one of them, she was just still sharp as a tack, but was having through arthritis, having a real rough time walking around. We're like, oh man, we just can't. Well, we got a red light device. And while she was just sitting down, we would give her like 10 or 15 minutes and unbelievable improvement in the way she was walking. Of course, it was temporary, but then we would do it again the next day. And we'd get regular and got her a bed with infrared too. And I think her quality of life improved. And cats aren't prone to placebo is my point. As opposed to, oh yeah, I think this is working. You know what I mean? And it
looks like bowl of pucky.
Yep. So if you look up red light and gene expression and inflammation for osteoarthritis, there's actually several good, well-controlled papers. It does sound nonsense, doesn't it?
Well, it looks like it.
Yeah.
It looks like they put red LEDs just to make it look like something, but there's just a couple magnets in it.
Honestly, I don't know about specific devices, but there's a couple on the market like Juve and Mito Red that have really well engineered products that are actually doing, what they're supposed to do. And so it's legit. I know it sounds ridiculous, but
yeah, it is more so it looks. I mean, maybe at 1 a.m. on TV that those are ridiculous.
And there's some interesting work on red light to the cornea to prevent macular degeneration, right? Carrie's shaking her head yes.
What's macular degeneration?
So with aging, we start to lose the parts of the eye start to degenerate. Okay. And what's interesting is this red light treatment seems to have helped prevent that and slow that.
Interesting.
So there's all kinds of cool stuff with that too. Yeah. But that was your question: is what's the difference between infrared and red? Very different biologic effects. Okay. Infrared seems to have more of a thermal effect. In other words, it actually produces heat as it penetrates into the body. So I personally am a fan of them both, but I use them for different things.
Both saunas,
both types of saunas, and that's why we got kind of a hybrid. We got one that does both.
Okay.
Chris, are you ready for some questions?
Oh, are we? You just telling me I'm done?
No. I didn't know.
You were just so done with the sauna. You were just let's move on.
Already talk about the recovery part though?
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Olivia. I'm just joking. She's trying to move this thing along. I'm being a jerk. See, it's that combativeness. It's the dementia setting in. A little bit. I can't help it.
Questions that she wants to ask you.
Yeah. So real quick. The recovery thing a lot has to do with that anti-inflammation I was talking about.
Yeah, the heat and cold, like that discussion, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, and muscle soreness, anecdotally, there's not a whole bunch of research behind it. I do think the infrared works pretty darn well for that.
All right.
Yeah, for recovery purposes. Yes, Olivia.
Okay. So I had a couple questions.
Can you show your shirt real quick to the people?
Mine?
Just so they can respect you a little bit more.
Thank you.
And you can throw me up there.
They have
this is a family thing.
Well, I told you about my brother's story, right? The all-wolf Christmas.
No.
Yeah. He is a jerk to my mom.
Okay.
In the funniest way.
Shout out, brother.
He won't, she asks him something. He's like, nah.
Okay.
Like, what do you want for your birthday? What do you want for Christmas? I don't want anything. Yeah, it's that type of guy. I don't need anything. And he goes, all right. He goes, wolves are cool. Yeah. Well, at Christmas, she got every present had something to do with a wolf.
Oh, that's cute.
It was an all-wolf Christmas.
All-wolf Christmas.
It's hilarious. He goes, that's the last time I get that. It is.
We might end up doing that.
So it just reminds me. I'm a fan of wolves, too. I think they're cool.
We buy these shirts from Leavenworth every year. Mm-hmm. We get a new one.
I like them.
Yeah.
They're very cool.
Go for it.
Okay. So if you want to do cold water exposure and sauna, how do you cycle that?
Yeah. Again, going back to our episode 4 on stress, like how I did that. The whole stress cup thing, you got to look at that because remember, these are both environmental stressors and they can have significant stress on the body. And the reason why they're effective is because of our response to the stress. That being said, if you're doing nothing really, like if you don't have anything super physical that day and you want to do like cold exposure in the morning and a sauna, or if you're 18 years old and you're bulletproof, you can do what the heck you want pretty much. But as you age, you got to kind of watch the stressors you're putting. In other words, I wouldn't do cold exposure in the morning, hard jiu-jitsu session, and then do sauna. I mean, that's a whole lot of stress on the body, for me anyway. So what I typically will do is non-training days, I'll try to definitely get my cold exposure. I will also after, let's say I train on Monday night, I sometimes will do a cold exposure for recovery the next morning. But I'm also not doing any exercise that day. And then sometimes I'll do a sauna, but I try to space them as much as I can. There are some benefits from doing the alternate hot and cold. There's a lot of research on that, but I don't just have the time.
Yeah, where you jump in one. And
yeah, man, it becomes a thing, right? It's like I don't have 2 hours or whatever.
Right.
But I typically, or let's say that I've slept really, really bad. And I wake up just feeling really wrung out. I won't do a big time cold exposure. I maybe dose it. I'll maybe hop in briefly. Yeah, but I won't do a full one.
And typically, and we talked about this in the cold recovery episode, but you're going to do your cold therapy stuff in the morning.
Yep.
And then the heat stuff would probably be later in the day.
Yeah, because of the circadian rhythm we talked about. Because then, that's why I do a hot bath every night anyway, because I feel like it sets me up because all the blood gets shunted to my extremities to allow off, because I want to encourage the cooling of the body.
And you can have difficult time getting to sleep if you just shocked your system with cold.
Totally.
Yeah.
Because then it's saying, hey, we got to warm ourselves up, and your body's temperature is supposed to be falling during the night, right? Yeah, exactly.
So not doing the cold stuff too late would be better.
Yeah. I don't think there's a huge deal about doing the hot early necessarily, but the cold is a definite potent stimulus that I personally wouldn't do it later in the day. But Olivia, that's how I do it. I have to be more careful. If you have basically a low stress job, you're younger, you eat well, you're sleeping well, you can get away with a lot. I mean, you could do your workouts and kind of have your cake and eat it too type of thing. I just have to be real careful. I don't get overtrained into a point where I've suppressed my immune system and I get sick and the whole 9 yards. Yeah. Does that help?
Yeah. Is it possible to climatize to both cold and heat at the same time?
It's very, very interesting. I think it is. You're probably trying to do, your body will, to a point, right? Because you're trying to do competing things, right? I have found that is the case. I don't know any studies that's showing it, but I have found that, we're able to, we've just reduced our cold tub another 2 degrees. I did it without telling Carrie. You probably. And
another 2 from last week?
No.
Oh, okay.
No. We talked about it last week.
Yeah.
But I still feel like I've noticed a big difference when I am doing sauna more regularly and I'm in the gym. I feel like I'm not gassing near as much when it gets hot. Okay. So I think there is definitely some adaptation. It does sound like it's kind of pulling two different directions, but remember they do have different physiologic effects too, though.
Is it something that someone should do when they are sick? I have heard like when people had Voldemort, they would do some sauna to help. So I didn't know if that would help your immune system.
So long-term sauna use, now not acutely, but long-term sauna use does seem in some small fashion might help the immune system. I think the only research I've seen is they've seen people that do regular sauna have less respiratory infections. But you got to be careful again. So again, if you're doing it, I wouldn't, if you're already febrile, if you already have a fever, I wouldn't do it. But if you feel like you're coming down with something, you want to I've done this before. I'm not giving medical advice here, but when I'm feeling rough, I will kind of get in there to kind of jumpstart almost like a fever response.
That sounds about as Russian as it gets.
It's pretty hardcore.
I feel like I might come down with something. Let me go sit in this 180 degrees.
You know who I talked to who does the same thing though when he's feeling sick? Mo told me he does the same thing. When he's feeling rough, he wants to sweat it out.
Well, Russians and Iraqis.
Huh? It's anecdotal.
Well, but what have you experienced with
I've experienced a benefit, I think. Yeah. I mean, again, it wasn't a controlled study or anything, but I feel like it does help me feel better. And I feel like that I might not have as much of the length of time that I normally would have. Again, it's understand, if you've been sick enough and kind of understanding how you're feeling or you're coming down with something, that can be helpful, but if doing too much can actually throw you the other way too, kind of overflow the stress cup and that type of thing. So you got to be careful with dosing it. But respiratory stuff, it's one of my go-tos. Like if I'm, especially if I'm, we had a bad pollen season, and just recently especially, I had a bunch of that stuff get down in my lungs, and I got into our sauna and put some distilled water on the rocks, got all that steam going in there, and it helped me kind of get some of that crap out of my lungs. So I think that helps a lot too.
Okay. And then
what do you think you are?
Who do you think you are?
No. Who should consult a doctor before starting something
like wow. This? Anybody that has, first of all, if you have unstable heart disease, in other words, you're on like nitroglycerin, and sometimes when you walk up the stairs, your chest starts to hurt and you got to take a nitroglycerin if you like what we call unstable cardiovascular disease, not a good idea because you're not going to tolerate it. Pregnancy, you got to be real careful. They did some studies in Finland, and I think they think the cutoff for adverse effects, and this is just one research study, so take it for what it is. They think a core body temperature up to 102 is probably safe for the mother and the developing fetus. But man, I would be real careful with that. I'd talk to your doc about that and whatever else you have going on. But they found that a lot of the women in Finland actually had a decreased incidence of birth defects the more sauna use they had. So, but again,
asthma people.
Yeah, asthma can be another. So asthma is also an inflammatory condition. So it can be. That's me as well. It helps me out quite a bit with asthma when I'm having problems.
Well, they don't need to consult their doctor.
If you're worried about anything, and if you have, I don't think asthma would be a problem. Something I will want to bring up. So really, like pregnancy, you gotta be careful. Unstable heart disease. Now, doesn't mean if you've had a heart attack before and you're doing okay. It can actually be beneficial because it helps with something called endothelial function. The endothelium is the layer of the arteries. And when it's working well, you're able to open and close and relax those arteries more, as opposed to them being very rigid. So it can help with even like congestive heart failure and things like that, as long as you're relatively stable on it. The other thing is there is a transient decrease in sperm count. So what that means is for men, reproductive age men, regular sauna use seems to reduce their sperm count. Whether that impacts fertility, we don't know. When you stop sauna, it comes right back up, though.
Interesting.
Yep. So if you're really trying to conceive and you want to just check all the boxes to make sure maximize your sauna is probably not a good idea either.
Do we know what that is?
Nope. I would assume it's very similar. So our testicles, when we're hot, they will drop away from the body for cooling. I think it is a direct heat effect, if I had to guess. Do you think so, Carrie? Yeah, Carrie.
You have your George Costanza, I was in the pool, which is
the opposite. And it goes the other way.
Hey, boom.
What's the problem?
Huh? Yeah.
Audi becomes an innie.
I always told people about like having HPS.
Yeah.
And they would be like, what the hell is that? It's like, hey, it's just a syndrome you probably got, dude. I'd be like, I don't understand. Then they would look it up and it's hidden penis syndrome. It's a real thing.
And you can just tell.
Yeah.
Even without,
without
spats, I know you're very focused.
What I'm saying is it's an insult that's a made you look, got you later. Because they go and they Google it when they get home.
And they're like, that son of a bitch.
He just said, I have a hidden penis. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I got you, and I'm not even around.
It's almost
anymore.
like a time bomb you're setting up with them.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can respect that.
Sneak attack.
I like that. But I mean, those are the big we call medical contraindications. But again, if you have any concern, talk to whoever's taking care of your healthcare needs. And you may get an informed answer, and you may not.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing that sucks is
I know
so many shit doctors.
Well, there's a lot of it is the nature of the industry right now, and people are. I mean, I'm not making excuses. I kind of am, but 15-minute medical appointments. Doctors are just trying to get through their day, much less keep up with research and especially preventive stuff. And no clue. You ask them about nutrition or exercise, they have no idea.
But they're doctors.
Well, I will tell you, I think I went off on that an earlier episode on nutrition that said, we get zero nutrition, which is insane. Or exercise. Mm-hmm. Does a doctor know how to program appropriate exercise? No. Mm-hmm. Okay. So it's a problem.
I always find it alarming when there can be like doctors that are not even older, but they're like literally obese.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Like, most of them.
Yeah. What are you doing?
That's terrible.
How do you?
Yeah. How are you going to give me advice on my health?
Right.
Yeah. That's
working out or anything like that.
Anything, right? Like, hey, you need to watch your diet. I'm like, yeah, so do you, buddy.
Hey.
Yeah, it's a real problem. Yeah, it's another rant of mine for sure.
Do you think any of that has to do with the doctors' like schedules and how much they have to work, so they maybe don't have the time?
Oh, absolutely, it does. Absolutely, especially a primary care doctor, they're getting beaten down, and they're being paid on production. On like they're making widgets in a factory. Patients aren't happy. Someone comes in. How many times have you heard your doctor like, no, I can only talk to you about one thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If you need something else, you got to make another appointment. Where Carrie's clinic, it's you know how that is. It's very comprehensive, but she's outside that whole system. Thank goodness.
Right, but they look at her like the devil.
A lot of it is because they're losing patients to her because of the system. And there's some really good doctors that are trying to do the best they can.
The system itself.
Someone's getting rich, and it ain't the patients, and it's certainly in the doctors. Anyway,
hospital administrators.
Well, the insurance companies, and that's where the devil is, actually.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Right.
So,
I only have a non-sauna related.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Can I ask him?
Yeah, of course.
Shoot.
Okay. Did you listen to the recent Joe Rogan episode with Mikey Musumeci?
Mm-hmm.
What do you think about his diet?
It's hilarious.
Just pasta all the time.
What's interesting though is,
so say what it is.
So it was hilarious, but I don't want to completely crap on it, okay? Because I'm gonna tell you why. So basically, what he does, he eats once a day, and he says he eats pasta, and he makes his own pizza at home. He has a pizza oven. He's really into it, super excited about it, which I think is cool. But he doesn't eat the entire day. So he does basically an intermittent fasting, which has a ton of benefits for insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, all kinds of stuff like that. He also, if you listen to it, the quality, he actually gets his pasta imported from Italy. And a lot of people have said this anecdotally, when they eat that pasta, they don't feel near as bloated as some of the processed stuff we have. Some of it has to do with the wheat itself, the amount of gluten in it. Many things, there's probably a ton of factors that go into that. But he has very low stress. He loves what he does. He trains a ton. And then he eats what he likes. I would argue that there may be some nutritional things he might want to supplement.
Sure.
That he may not be getting.
Can you really eat that much protein in cheese?
Yeah,
that's
so
even quality protein.
Yeah, I mean you can get a good amount, but probably not to sustain what would be he's getting by fine, and he's a world champion. He's a phenomenal jiu-jitsu, but I would argue that he could probably be optimized even better, especially when he gets older. As he gets older,
because he's 25 and 130
exactly pounds. And I think that if he added a little more protein into the pizza, or had some and he says he does that sometimes, add some seafood into the pasta, right. I think that would be, and making sure he's getting some long chain omega-3s, B12, depending on how little meat he could be an issue too. There's a couple little holes in there, but honestly, it's the way he's getting, it's the amount of activity, his age, and also I would say that I'm speculating, I bet you his gut microbiome has become very efficient with this diet because he's eaten this way for a long time, as far as in general.
Right.
And he's happy with it. He made a very good point. Like, he was miserable dieting.
Yeah.
And that has a lot to do with stuff, man. Yeah. I mean, that affects...
He said he likes this one because he can do it.
Totally.
He can be consistent with it.
He said the word several times, it's sustainable for him. Yeah. And if it's working for him, does that mean that you or I could do that with the same results? I guarantee you I could not.
Right.
I would get really fat.
Yeah.
But the intermittent fasting has a lot to probably do with that too. Because he's really, during that whole, you think about it, he probably has almost a 24-hour fasting period.
Right.
And so he's getting all that, what we call autophagy, where, cellular cleanup, a lot of the fasting benefits are coming into play for the metabolism, and then he refeeds.
Yeah.
So he's not getting into this big cortisol spike.
And it sounds like he has, zero processed sugar.
Right.
So there's some really good things.
Yeah. He does have that acai bowl, but I don't.
Yeah.
I don't know what's in that. But look, man, again, I can't imagine how many calories the guy's burning.
I assume if he's flying in his pasta from Italy, he's probably using a decent quality acai.
I would assume.
Which is just berries. But
yeah, I would assume, but it depends on how you make that thing, of course, right?
But he's talking about
if you go
training.
If you go full Bill Walker, I don't know how.
Is that crazy though? He said he counted and it was like 7,000 calories.
Yeah. Do you remember hearing what Michael Phelps was eating?
Yeah.
Yeah, his was like crazy too.
Like 10,000 calories or something ridiculous.
But then it was something with how much in the pool he was in the pool. It was burning like 8,000.
Oh,
just in
it's
his pool
unbelievable. Workouts. Plus, not just during your workout, but the afterburns effect, so to speak. The metabolism is up significantly after that.
Yeah, you're burning even once you're out.
That's where a lot of it comes into play, too. So, no, I think Mikey's probably fueling, he has hit a sweet spot for him.
Yeah.
Again, that's what's so individual about things. So when you ask what I think about that, like for me, that would be a disaster. But it's working for him, and it might work for some other people. But I think the unexplored part of that is the gut microbiome, because it changes over years with, depending on its composition, depending on what is being fed. Yeah. Certain things will grow and overgrow and, kind of change the composition to process. And it's actually an integral part in metabolism. And I've mentioned this before, where The mice studies where you've taken a group of obese mice and a group of lean mice, and then they just did a fecal transplant from the lean to the obese, no other changes, and the obese mice lost weight. So that shows you how powerful that gut microbiome is, at least in animal models. So there's probably a lot going on there that is very unique to him that you just can't. That's why you can't say, oh, so-and-so's doing this, so that must be the way to go.
Yeah, there's probably, I mean, he could optimize more, sure.
Yeah.
This or that, but he's found something that is working and it's not hurting him necessarily.
And I bet you his stress is really low.
Right,
he's not like
because he's
just miserable. He's enjoying things. That's a huge part of health. Yeah. So good, more power to him as far as I'm concerned.
Right.
Yep.
Any other questions?
Well, you know what? Actually, that did make me think of one more thing. So cold water exposure can affect metabolism.
Mm-hmm.
Can sauna?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, you're still from a different stimulus. You're still producing a shock to the body. Yeah, it absolutely can. Remember, it's acting. Sauna especially is acting like an exercise mimetic. In other words, it's mimicking the effects of exercise. So it has those same type of cardiovascular and metabolic benefits that exercise does. Yeah, for sure. That's what's so cool about it. So if you're like pretty injured and you're kind of immobilized and you're like, hey, I still want to get, that's better than nothing for sure. To keep you kind of cardiovascular fit somewhat. Yeah.
Let alone all the other stuff. I assume for people that are older, it's like that could be absolutely huge.
And I think that's why we're seeing some of these longevity studies in Finland. Why we're seeing such an amazing type of results for all-cause mortality, cardiovascular disease, and neurodegenerative changes.
I'm going to tell my mom she needs to get up on that.
Well, and the thing is, when you guys are looking at that, if someone's considering it, really do your research. There's a couple. I think some of the best U.S. brands like Clearlight Saunas. We got ours from a Finnish manufacturer. I think it's Finleo. Again, they're pricey, but you got to look at it as a health investment, right? Not just like a thing that's kind of cool. Like it's not like we're buying a car or something, right? And so I think it's Carrie and I very well, and you know what we spend our money on: gym stuff, cold water, float tanks, that kind of stuff, right? Yeah. And so it's prioritizing where you want to put your resources.
Good things.
Cool.
Already said it once. Subscribe, like, comment, ask us questions.
Well, yes, absolutely. And I want to tease the next episode.
Okay.
So we did a really cool, very well received, it looks like, our white belt interview with Dr. Jonathan Kang. We are going to be doing a blue belt one with one of our really good friends who has a really cool story too. And he agreed to come on next week. So
good. We're going to go through all the belts.
I think it's a great idea
because we'll go back down. We'll go all the way up to black.
But everyone has a different experience. And I think the more we get of those people, all of us are coming from different backgrounds and do this art for different reasons, right? Yeah. And it's kind of cool to look at the things they're dealing with in jiu-jitsu as like a blue belt, right? What are they worried about? What are their challenges? Yeah. And I think it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
so sure. That's going to be next week.
Sounds good. We're also documenting my cut, how it's healing.
It looks amazing, actually.
Right.
Pretty accidentally peeled off the scab that was there.
Yeah, man, that's gonna be a good look for you.
Got a little aggressive with the loofah.
Did you?
Yeah. Peeled that thing right off.
Well, it looks actually very, very good.
Thank you. I'm doing the triple antibiotic every day, twice a day.
You're getting to the point now where you have enough granulation tissue over there. You probably can just do a very slight, don't need much anymore. The barrier now is formed.
I can keep it open to the
totally
air.
You can keep it open to the air. You can just protect it from actual abrasions while rolling or something.
I'm rolling,
but otherwise you can keep it open for sure.
Okay.
Yep. Cool.
Good that everyone knows. Blow us up.
What we're doing for Bill.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's go.
All right.